This is part 2 of WCF video series. In this video, we'll discuss creating a simple remoting service and a web service. Along the way, we'll get a feel of how different these two technologies are. Let's assume we've got two clients. The first client is using a Java web application to communicate with our service. So the main requirement here is interoperability. To make our service interoperable, we're going to exchange messages in XML format, and we're going to use HTTP protocol. XML over HTTP offers interoperability. So to make our service interoperable, we're going to build the service as a web service. The second client is using Windows application to communicate with our service. Windows application is also a .NET application. The main requirement for this client is performance. To offer better performance, we're going to exchange messages in binary format over TCP protocol, because binary over TCP offers better performance. So here we are going to rewrite the same service using .NET remoting technology. And the service we are going to build is a very simple service. All this service is going to do is take a name, and then it's going to concatenate the word hello with that name and then return that string back to the caller. So let's first of all go ahead and implement a web service. Let's flip to Visual Studio. Let's create a new project. Let's create an ASP.NET empty web application. Let's call this Web Services Demo. And to this project, let's add a web service. And let's call this Hello Web Service. Now within this Hello Web Service, we're going to have a single method, and let's call it getMessage. And this is going to take a parameter called name, and we are going to concatenate that name with word hello and return that as a string. So we are done implementing the web service. Let's now view this web service in a browser just to make sure it's working as expected. So this hello web service should now list the method that we have implemented. So getMessage is there. So let's click that and then pass Prajim as the name, and let's invoke the web service. So we are getting the response back, hello Prajim. So it's working as expected. Now the client is going to be a Java web application, but then I don't have Java installed on my machine. Web services are interoperable, so a Java web application can communicate with the web service that we have built. Let's quickly test our service using an ASP.NET web application. And to do that, right click on the solution, add a new project. Let's add another empty web application. Let's call this Hello Web Client. Click OK. So this should add an empty ASP.NET web project, and to this let's add a web form. Now we need to generate a proxy class within this ASP.NET web application project, and to do that we right click on the references folder, add a service reference, and then click this discover button. This is going to automatically discover the services. So hello web service is detected. Let's give it a meaningful namespace. Let's call it hello web service, and then click OK. So this should generate the proxy class for us. So here we have the proxy class generated. Now let's design our web form. So let's use a table. Let's set the style attribute. Let's set font family to Arial. So basically we want to design our web form like this. So we need a text box, button, and a label control. So let's drag and drop a text box here. So within the first TD we need a text box and a button control. And let's have another TD, and here let's have a label control. And let's get rid of this text attribute and set font bold to true. Alright, Now let's flip this form to the design mode. Double click on the button to generate the click event handler, but before that let's change the text on the button to get message, and let's double click that button. So now we need to create an instance of the proxy class. So if you remember, the namespace that we have given is hello web service dot the web service is hello web service soap client. So client equals new hello web service soap client. Now all we need to do is invoke the get message function and then pass it the name, and where are we going to get the name from the text box, and then whatever response that we get back, we're going to display that within label 1 control. So pretty simple. So let's run our web form now. So now we should get an interface that's similar to this one. So let's enter Prajim, get message, and look at that. So the web application is able to communicate with the web service. Now let's go ahead and build a remoting service to satisfy the requirement of the second client. Let's actually open up Visual Studio. Now let's create a new project. Now we are going to create a remoting service. Now look at this, how different building a remoting service is going to be. We're not going to get into the basic details of remoting. If you're interested, we'll discuss the basic details of remoting in a later video session. So the first step here is to create a service interface. So I'm going to select Visual C# under installed templates, and I'm going to add a project of type class library, and let's call this iHello remoting service. So this class library project is just going to contain one interface. Let's change the name of this class1.cs file to iHello remoting service.cs. In a bit you'll understand why we are creating this interface. So we have an interface here, iHello remoting service, and all this interface is going to contain is a method. So get message method. So this method needs to take a parameter, name parameter. Now it's the same service, we are just rewriting it using remoting technology. So all we have done so far is added a project, and within that project we added an interface, and within that interface we have got a single method that's taking the name and then returning a string. Okay. Now the next step is to implement the remoting service itself, and to do that, to this solution I'm going to add another project. And again it's going to be a class library project, and let's call this hello remoting service. Let's click OK, and let's change the name of this class1.cs file here to hello remoting service.cs. So it's asking us whether if we want to change the name of the class as well. Let's click S. So now we want this object to be remotable. Remotable meaning, another application should be able to call this object. Okay, so to make an object remotable, there are two ways. We can either decorate this class with serializable attribute, or we can make this class inherit from Marshall by ref object class. Again, as I told before, we'll discuss the basic details of remoting in a later video session. In this video, let's quickly build this remoting service. So to make this hello remoting service class remotable, I'm going to make this inherit from Marshall by ref object. And then we also need to make this class inherit from this interface, that is iHello remoting service. And in order for us to do that, we need to add a reference to this project within this project. So let's add a reference, and on the projects tab, select the project iHello remoting service. So we are making this hello remoting service inherit from I hello remoting service dot I hello remoting service class. So what did we do until now? We have this class called hello remoting service, which is inheriting from Marshall by ref object and then the interface. Okay, now we need to implement the method that is available in this interface, and to do that, click this arrow and then select this option, implement interface. Okay, so all this method is going to do is return hello plus the name that is coming into this function. Alright, that's it. We are done implementing the service. Now we need to host this remoting service. To host a remoting service, there are several choices. We can either host it in a console application or a Windows Forms application, or we can use a Windows service, or a remoting service can also be hosted in IIS. To make things simple, let's host it in a console application. So let's add a console application project to the solution. So we want to add a console application, and let's call it remoting service host. Now this project needs to have a reference to these two projects, that is the interface project as well as the service project itself. So let's right click on references folder, select add reference, and then select both the projects, click OK. So a reference has been added to both of the projects. Now another thing that we need to do is, since we are doing remoting here, we need to add a reference to system.runtime.remoting assembly. That's a .NET assembly. So click on .NET tab, scroll all the way down, and you should see system.runtime.remoting. Select that. And now here we need three namespaces. So using system.runtime.remoting, we need system.runtime.remoting.channels. We're going to use TCP protocol to communicate. So we need system.runtime.remoting.channels.tcp. Alright, so within the main function of this class, we need to host the service. So when we run this, the main method is going to run at that point. The service will be hosted. So the first step is to create the service class itself. So what is the service class? Hello remoting service, which is present in hello remoting service namespace. So within our console application, let's go ahead and create an instance of that hello remoting service class, and let's call it remoting service equals new hello remoting service. So we are creating an instance of our service class. The next step is to create the TCP channel for communication. So let's go ahead and create a TCP channel. Let's call it channel equals new TCP channel. Now let's use this overloaded constructor where we can specify a port number. Basically, we are making our service available at port 8080. So any port that's available on your machine, you can use that port to make your service available. So we have created the channel itself, but we need to register this channel. And to register the channel, we're going to make use of channel services class dot register channel method. And then we pass the channel object to this. The next step is to register the service itself, and to do that we are going to use another class, so remoting configuration class, and then we are going to use this method register well-known client type, well-known service type, and then we are going to use this overloaded version of the method. So we need to specify the type, the type of the class that contains the service. So where is the service present? In hello remoting service namespace, and the name of the class is hello remoting service. So we use the type of keywords to get the type of that class. So that's the first parameter. So let's bring this to the next line. And the second parameter here is we need to specify the URI. Where is this service located? Okay, so basically, we can give it any unique resource identifier. Within our service, we are calling the method as get message. We can give this name, or you can give it any unique identifier, but let's give it get message. And then finally, we need to specify the well-known object mode. If you look at this enumeration here, we have two choices. Is it single call or singleton? Now again, we'll get into the details of single call and singleton in a later video session. For now, let's choose singleton. Basically, single call means an object of type single call can service one and only one client, meaning it cannot store state information. But if your requirement is to store state information between client invocations, then you need to use singleton. As I told, we'll discuss the basic details of remoting in a later video session. Now, let's print a message to the console stating that the service has started. And to do that, let's use the writeLine class of the console, writeLine method of the console class, and let's say remoting service started at whatever is the date and time the service has started. So datetime.now. And then obviously when we run this console project, what's going to happen? It starts the service and then it's going to close automatically. So to keep this from closing automatically, let's use console.readLine method. Alright, so at this point we have hosted our remoting service as well. So all that is left now is to consume this remoting service, and we have decided the client is going to be a Windows application. So let's go ahead and add a Windows application to the solution. So right click on the solution, add a new project, and let's add a Windows Forms application, and let's call this Hello Service Client. Let's actually call it Hello Remoting Service Client. Click OK. So now on this form, we need a text box, a button, and a label control. So let's quickly drag and drop the respective controls. So we need a text box, we need a button, and we need a label. Let's arrange these controls properly. Let's change the font of this label control to be a little big. So we have font here, and let's set size to 15. And let's also get rid of this default text which says label 1. We need to change the text property. So let's get rid of this text here. And then on this button, let's change the text to get message. Alright, let's double click that button to generate the click event handler. So now we need to consume the remoting service that we have implemented. This client project needs to have a reference to remoting assembly itself. So first let's go ahead and add a reference to remoting assembly. So system.runtime.remoting. And we need a reference to the interface assembly as well. Look at this. This is the client. To the client, we shouldn't be giving the implementation details. We should only let him know about the interface that he's going to communicate with. Okay, so that's the reason why we have separated the service interface from its implementation. Okay, so this client now is going to have a reference to this hello remoting service interface. So let's go ahead and add a reference to that project. So hello remoting service. Alright, so the first thing here at the class level, let's create a variable of type hello remoting service, which is present in the namespace hello remoting service, and the interface itself is hello remoting service, and let's call it client. And when the form is created, what we need to do, we need to open up a TCP channel and then communicate with the service. So the first step here is to create a TCP channel, and to do that we need to bring in the remoting namespaces that are required. Here we only need two remoting namespaces, that is system.runtime.remoting.channels and system.runtime.remoting.channels.tcp. So let's create a TCP channel, and for the client there is no need to specify the port number, so let's use the constructor which doesn't take the port number. And then we need to register the channel. So to register the channel we are going to use channel services dot register channel method, and then pass the channel object. And now we are going to use a class called activator. So activator, and this class has got a method called getObject, which is going to get the service object that's going to service us. Okay, but look at the return type of this method. It is returning that service object as an object. So look at the IntelliSense. So we need to typecast it to be of this type. And then this method has got two overloaded versions. We are going to use the first version, which takes the type and the URL. So let's bring this to the next line. The type is, let's use the type of keyword to get the type. The type is nothing but hello remoting service. And then where is the service located? We know that we are going to use TCP protocol. So TCP:// on the local host machine at port number 8080. So if you remember, within the service host we have specified that the service is going to be available at this port number 8080. So let's get to the form. So at port 8080, and if you remember, we have given it a unique resource identifier within the host. What is the unique resource identifier? Get message. So this name and the name that we specify here should match. Alright, so we have the client now. All we need to do now is, within the button click event, invoke the get message function, pass it the name. The name is going to come from text box 1 control, and then whatever response that we get back, let's display that within label 1 control. Alright, we're done. So let's build the solution to make sure everything is working as expected. Notice the status bar, build succeeded. Now we need to first run the host. So let's right click on the remoting service host project, open folder in Windows Explorer, get to the bin directory, debug, and then we should find remoting service host.exe. This is the executable. Double click that. Look at that, the service is now running. Now we need to run the client itself. So to open the client, right click on remoting service client project, open folder in Windows Explorer, get to the bin, debug, and then you should find hello remoting service client.exe. Double click that. So there we have our Windows application. Let's enter Prajim here, and let's click this button, get message. So this should invoke the service, and look at that, we get the response. Okay, so this is a very simple service, but then look at the amount of code that we have to write, and how different is the implementation from that of a web service. It's the same service, but then the technology is different from web services, and that's the reason why it's so different implementing it. So in part 3, we'll discuss implementing a single WCF service to meet the requirements of both of these clients. Now, there are some interview questions related to this .NET Remoting service. Now, the interviewer could ask you, can we use .NET Remoting to build a web service? The answer is yes. So if we are able to build a web service using .NET Remoting, then if the client is not built using .NET Platform, will they be able to consume a .NET Remoting web service? Meaning, the web service that we have built using .NET, will it be interoperable? The answer is maybe. I mean, we can build interoperable web services using .NET Remoting, but we need to be extremely careful in choosing the data types that we use in the service. And we cannot use client activated objects and events. There are, those should be avoided. So keep in mind, when we use .NET Remoting to build interoperable web services, things can get very complicated. Okay, because .NET Remoting is not meant for implementing interoperable services. If your goal is to build interoperable services, use ASP.NET Web Services. They are designed for that purpose. But with the introduction of WCF, both this .NET Remoting and ASP.NET Web Services are legacy technologies. So basically, as we have WCF now, whether we want to build interoperable web services or whether we want to exchange messages in binary format for performance reasons, we should be using WCF over .NET Remoting or ASP.NET Web Services. That's it for today. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.